I never imagined my own brother would be the one to break me. I had just given birth to my twin sons, still holding them in my arms, when he stormed into my hospital room with his wife and slammed his fists against my head. The monitors screamed, the babies cried, and everything I thought I knew about family shattered in seconds. And when you find out why he did it, you might lose your breath too. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, which city or country are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? I love seeing how far these stories travel and how many hearts they reach around the world. My name is Jenna, I'm 29 years old, and this is the story of how I became a mother in Denver, Colorado, and how the people who shared my blood nearly destroyed the most beautiful moment of my life. I'm married for love, not for approval. Peter, my husband, is the kind of man who doesn't say much but always shows up when it matters. He's a mechanic, hands always a little rough, but his touch is the gentlest thing I know. My in-laws, Carla and Franklin, open their hearts to me from day one. They call me their daughter, not their daughter-in-law, and they mean it. But my own parents never saw me that way. Derek, my father, believes respect is something you earn only by obeying him. Brooke, my mother, has spent her whole life following his voice instead of her own. To them, I was always the mistake, the daughter who didn't listen, the one who married without permission. When I walked down the aisle 5 years ago, the only family I had waiting at the end was Peter and the two people who raised him. My parents refused to attend. My brother Travis, their golden child, didn't call, didn't text, didn't even pretend to care. And yet, despite all of that, I kept trying. I sent birthday cards, holiday messages, even photos when Peter and I bought our first little house in Aurora, a quiet suburb outside Denver. The replies were always the same. Silence from Travis, sarcasm from my parents. Carla once told me, "You can't teach people what love looks like if they don't want to see it." I smiled, but deep down, I still believed they'd come around, especially when Peter and I started talking about having a baby. When the pregnancy test finally turned positive, I felt my heart split open with joy and fear at the same time. I told Peter first. He picked me up and spun me around our tiny kitchen until we were both laughing through tears. Then I told my parents, still hoping they'd be proud. My father's only response was, "Can Peter even afford this?" My mother said nothing. I should have known then that some people don't change, no matter how big the miracle. Our first year of marriage felt like learning to breathe in a new language. Peter and I were building everything from scratch, our routines, our home, our rhythm. Denver was kind to us. Cold winters, steady jobs, and neighbors who waved even if they didn't know your name. Carla and Franklin lived 15 minutes away and treated our apartment like an extension of their own home. Carla dropped by every Sunday with casseroles. Franklin helped Peter fix things we couldn't afford to replace. But the silence from my own family hung over everything. When we mailed out our wedding photos, none of them responded. Not a text, not a call, nothing. The only sign of acknowledgement came 2 months later when Travis's wife, Tessa, posted a picture from a family dinner. My parents smiling, Travis holding up a glass, the caption reading, "Family is everything." It felt like a punch made of pixels. Peter noticed. "You don't have to keep trying with them," he said one night, tightening his arm around me. "You've already done more than enough. I just want them to care," I whispered. He looked at me with those steady eyes. "Then we'll build our own family, the kind that knows how." We did. Carla and Franklin became the parents I'd always needed. They came over for Thanksgiving, sat with us on folding chairs, and helped us carve the cheapest turkey in the store like it was a feast. Franklin toasted, saying, "Here's to new beginnings and old recipes." We laughed until we forgot who wasn't there. But my brother never forgot how to remind me I didn't belong. Travis had always been our parents' pride. He owned a small construction business and wore his success like armor. When he finally called, it wasn't to check on me. It was to show off. "Still renting?" he asked casually. "For now," I said, forcing a smile he couldn't see. "Should have married smarter," he laughed. "Dad says Peter's just a blue-collar dreamer." I hung up before my voice could break. A week later, Tessa sent me a message on Facebook. "You know, it's not too late to come visit," she wrote. "Mom and Dad still talk about you all the time." I almost believed her, until I read the next line. They just wish you'd made better choices. From then on, every encounter carried a quiet cruelty. If I visited home, Tessa would point out everything I didn't have. A bigger car, a better house, more money. We've been trying for a baby, she once said, hand on her stomach, voice trembling just enough to sound fragile. It must be nice not to have to worry about that. Then, after a small pause, she added softly, we've been trying for years. Doctors say it might never happen for us. Her voice cracked slightly, and for a second, I saw something behind her smile. Not sadness, but envy, the kind that hides behind politeness. I didn't know how to tell her I was worried about rent, about bills, about my parents forgetting I existed. So I just nodded and said, I hope it happens for you soon. When we left that night, Peter said softly, you don't owe them another visit. But I kept going back because some part of me still wanted my family to see that I was happy, even if it wasn't their version of happiness. Then one day, during a visit for my father's birthday, I overheard something that changed how I looked at them forever. Derek was bragging to a neighbor about Travis's perfect marriage and Tessa's elegance, saying, that's how a real daughter-in-law should be. Brooke laughed in agreement. My name never even entered the conversation. I stood there on the porch, hearing the wind whistle through the railing, and realized that no matter what I did, I'd always be an outsider in my own bloodline. That night, Peter held me as I cried, his voice steady against my shoulder. One day, he said, you'll stop needing their approval, and that's when you'll finally be free. At the time, I didn't believe him. But looking back now, I know he was right. That freedom would come, but it would cost more than I ever imagined. It happened on a quiet Saturday morning, the kind of morning where the light falls gently through the blinds and everything feels still. I'd been feeling off for days, dizzy, exhausted, half hopeful, half terrified. Peter noticed before I did. You've been sleeping more than the cat, he joked, handing me a pregnancy test with that half smile that always melts me. When the result appeared, 2 pink lines stared back at me like a secret too big to hold. I just sat there, shaking, until Peter knelt down, eyes wide. We're really doing this, he whispered. We're going to be parents. We hugged in the middle of the bathroom floor, both laughing and crying at once. The next day, Carla insisted on coming over with a stack of prenatal vitamins and a dozen pieces of advice. Franklin brought his old camera and said, you'll want pictures later. Trust me. For the first time, I felt surrounded by warmth that didn't ask for permission to exist. The doctor confirmed the pregnancy at 6 weeks. Everything looks healthy, she said, clicking through the black and white images on the monitor. It's early, so we'll learn more around 12 weeks. That last sentence lingered, but I didn't think much of it. I was already too busy imagining tiny fingers and nursery colors. Telling my parents was harder. I called one evening, rehearsing every word. My father answered with his usual impatience. Pregnant, huh? Derek said flatly. You sure Peter's ready for that responsibility? He is, I replied. Brooke's voice drifted in from the background. Well, congratulations, I guess. Just be careful, Jenna. Kids change everything. There was no excitement, no warmth, just the faint disapproval of people who wished I'd waited for their blessing before living my life. Still, I clung to the good. Carla and Franklin were over the moon. Carla started knitting baby blankets in neutral colors. Franklin measured the spare room for a crib they planned to build themselves. Even Peter became more protective, driving slower, cooking dinner, Googling every craving I had. We laughed about it, but deep down I loved how seriously he took every heartbeat I carried. At 12 weeks, the doctor's office was brighter than usual. Peter held my hand while the technician moved the ultrasound wand across my stomach. She frowned slightly, then smiled. Do you see that? She asked. Peter squinted. I see, too. 2, she confirmed. Congratulations, you're having twins. I turned to Peter, and for a second, the world just stopped. Then he let out a shaky laugh and kissed my forehead. 2 of them? Guess we'd better learn to function on no sleep. Carla cried when we told her. Double blessings, she said. Franklin teased Peter. Better start building that second crib sooner than planned. Their joy filled the spaces my parents left empty. I sent a copy of the ultrasound photo to my parents anyway, hoping maybe they'd see what I saw. Hope, life, family. Derek didn't respond. Brooke texted, "Twins are a lot. Don't overdo it." That was it. A few days later, Tessa finally called. "Wow," she said, her tone sharp under a layer of politeness. "Twins, huh? Guess you always get what you want." "It's not about getting," I said quietly. "It's about grace." She laughed. "Whatever helps you sleep." That was the first time I realized jealousy has a sound, soft, controlled, and deadly. Peter tried to keep me focused on joy. He painted the nursery pale yellow. Carla taught me how to knit tiny hats. Franklin sanded down the cribs until they felt smooth as glass. Every kick reminded me that I was building something bigger than bitterness. Still, in quiet moments, I wondered if my brother or my parents would ever feel happiness for me, or if my growing belly only made their resentment louder. By the start of my 7th month, everything about life felt heavier: my body, my steps, and the silence from my family. Peter and I had settled into a calm rhythm, counting down weeks and baby kicks, but outside our little world, something darker was brewing. Tessa's envy had started to spill beyond whispered comments. At first, it was small things: a sarcastic emoji under my maternity photos, a pointed "must be nice" comment whenever Carla mentioned how much Peter cared for me. But then her bitterness found a louder stage: social media. She began posting quotes that felt less like coincidence and more like confession. Some spoke about women who flaunt blessings they didn't earn, others about mothers who forget what real struggle feels like. Each word carried the bitterness of someone who had prayed for years for what she could never have. Some people don't deserve blessings they flaunt. Not everyone who smiles is happy. Some just want attention. Each post came hours after mine. Each one sliced through me like paper cuts, small, constant, impossible to ignore. Travis wasn't any better. He rarely spoke to me directly, but when he did, every word came coated in resentment. He called once to check in, though it felt more like interrogation. "So, Peter's still at that garage job?" he asked, voice smug. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound proud. "He loves what he does." "Sure," he muttered. "Love doesn't pay college funds, Jenna." I hung up before the tremor in my throat could turn into words I'd regret. Carla noticed the change in me. "You're quieter," she said one evening while folding baby clothes. "I'm just tired," I lied. She smiled softly. "Then rest your heart too. Some people feed on reaction. Don't serve them." I tried. God, I tried. I muted notifications, deleted Tessa's posts from my mind, and focused on the twins' soft movements under my skin. But every time I felt peace, something, a text, a comment, a rumor, found its way back in. The final straw came at my baby shower. Carla and Franklin hosted it at a small cafe near downtown Denver, with pastel balloons and a cake that said "Twice Blessed." Peter was radiant, beaming like he'd built the whole day with his bare hands. But halfway through the afternoon, Tessa showed up, uninvited. She wore black, as if mourning someone's joy. Her smile was the kind people practice in mirrors. "Didn't want to miss it," she said sweetly, kissing the air beside my cheek. "We were so surprised to see you pregnant with twins. You always had such good luck." The table went still. Carla's expression hardened. Peter's hand found mine under the table, steadying me. "Tessa," he said calmly, "maybe today isn't the time." She tilted her head. "Oh, come on. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." "No," Carla cut in, her tone sharp enough to freeze the air. "You're saying what jealousy sounds like." Tessa flushed, muttered something about sensitive people, and left before the cake was even cut. I wanted to pretend it didn't hurt, but that night, as I packed the leftover favors, I realized something terrifying. Envy doesn't always stay in words. Sometimes, it waits for a moment to act. Peter tried to brush it off. "She'll calm down," he said. "They both will." But deep down, I wasn't sure anymore. There was something in Travis's eyes lately, something tight, cold, unreadable. Still, I held on to faith, telling myself that once the babies came, everyone would soften. I didn't know then that the bitterness I ignored was already shaping into violence. The morning my water broke, Denver was covered in snow. Soft, clean, and endless. Peter nearly slipped on the driveway trying to get me into the car, muttering, "Our boys sure know how to make an entrance." I laughed through the pain, clutching his hand as we sped through the quiet streets toward Denver Health Medical Center. Inside the maternity ward, everything felt like motion and light. Nurses moving quickly, monitors beeping, and Peter whispering steady words in my ear. "You're doing amazing, Jenna. Just breathe. I'm right here." Labor stretched on for hours. I lost count after the 12th contraction. Carla and Franklin waited outside the delivery room, praying softly. Peter refused to leave my side even for a second, his rough hand wrapped around mine. When the doctor finally said, "It's time," I thought my heart would burst before my body did. Then came the first cry, a strong, sharp sound that sliced through exhaustion and filled every space with life. "It's a boy," the nurse said, smiling as she lifted him up. A minute later, another cry followed, softer, but just as perfect. "And another boy," she added. Tears streamed down my face. Peter kissed my forehead, whispering, "Two miracles, Jenna. Two of them." They placed both babies on my chest, tiny, warm, and breathing in sync, like they'd never been apart. I felt the weight of everything I'd ever wanted pressed against me. For the first time in my life, I didn't care who wasn't there. I only cared about what was in my arms. Hours later, after the chaos settled, Carla came in with flowers and Franklin with a shaky grin. "You did it, sweetheart," Carla said, brushing my hair back. "You made our family bigger." Peter laughed, holding one baby while I held the other. "We need to pick names before they start paying rent," he joked. I smiled, looking down at their tiny faces. "Eli," I said, touching the first one's hand. "And Noah," I whispered for the second. It just felt right. Carla nodded approvingly. Strong names for strong boys. After everyone left to grab dinner, Peter kissed me gently and said, "I'll run to the hospital pharmacy, get the meds and a few things the nurse listed. I'll be right back." I remember watching him walk out the door, thinking how lucky I was. The room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of the monitors and the faint hum of the heater. I looked down at my sons, swaddled and sleeping beside me, their chests rising and falling like waves. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, everything felt still, peaceful in a way that almost made me forget how cruel the world could be. Then there was a knock. Soft at first. I thought it was a nurse checking vitals. But when the door opened, I froze. Standing there were Travis and Tessa, my brother and sister-in-law, dressed too neatly, smiles too tight. "Congratulations," Tessa said, stepping inside before I could speak. "We just wanted to see the babies." Something inside me whispered that peace never lasts long in a family built on resentment. The room was warm, quiet, and filled with the soft hum of the heater when they walked in, Travis and Tessa, my brother and his wife. I was still holding Eli, and Noah was sleeping peacefully in the bassinet beside me. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, they had come in peace. But the second I saw the look in Tessa's eyes, I knew better. She was scanning the room, her expression sharp and calculating. "So, these are the miracles everyone's talking about," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "You must feel pretty lucky, Jenna. Not everyone gets this kind of attention." Then her tone hardened. "Do you even realize what it's like to want this and be told you never will? To pray for a heartbeat that never comes." I forced a polite smile, keeping my voice low so I wouldn't wake the babies. "They're my sons, Tessa. It's not attention, it's love." Travis laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Love? You mean pity. You think this little show makes you better than the rest of us." I blinked at him, unsure what to say. "I didn't invite you here to argue. Peter's just gone to get some medication. Maybe you should come back when—" Tessa cut me off sharply. "When what? When you can show off a little more. You've always been good at stealing the spotlight, Jenna." First with your perfect husband, now with your double miracle. Something inside me snapped. The exhaustion, the hormones, the years of quiet humiliation. All of it came to the surface. Tessa, that's enough, I said firmly. You don't get to talk about my children like that. Not here. Not today. Her smirk vanished, replaced by something darker. Who do you think you are, talking to me like that in front of my husband? Before I could answer, Travis stepped forward, his voice rising. You don't raise your voice to my wife, do you understand me? I froze. Travis, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down, he roared, his face red, fists tightening at his sides. Everything happened in seconds. He took 2 steps closer, his eyes blazing with rage. You think you can disrespect my wife and get away with it? He shouted. And then, before I could even move, he swung his fist. The first punch landed on the side of my head, sharp and blinding. Eli screamed in my arms. I gasped, the room spinning, trying to shield him. Stop. I cried out, clutching my baby against my chest. But he didn't stop. The second punch came harder, hitting me square on the temple. My vision blurred. I felt warmth trickle down my face. Blood. Eli's cries grew louder, desperate. Tessa didn't move to stop him. Instead, she stood back, watching with a twisted satisfaction. That's enough, Travis, she finally said, though her voice carried no urgency. It was like she was enjoying the chaos. The sound of Eli crying must have drawn attention, because within seconds the door burst open. 2 nurses rushed in, one shouting, "Security! Call security now!" Travis backed away, breathing heavily, his knuckles red. I could barely hear, through the ringing in my ears. One nurse gently took Eli from my trembling arms while the other helped me lean back against the pillows. Moments later, 2 security guards and a hospital police officer stormed in. "Sir, step away from the patient," one of them ordered. Tessa tried to intervene. It was just a misunderstanding. "Ma'am, step back," the officer snapped, pushing her aside. Peter appeared in the doorway, breathless, holding a small pharmacy bag. His face went pale as he took in the scene. Blood on my temple, the twins crying, Travis being restrained. "What the hell happened?" he shouted. "He hit her," one nurse said. "Twice. While she was holding her baby." Peter's voice broke. You hit my wife." Travis sneered. "She disrespected my family." Before Peter could reach him, the officer grabbed Travis's arm. "You're under arrest for aggravated assault and endangerment of minors." The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the room. Tessa tried to pull away, yelling, "You can't arrest him for a family argument." But another officer arrived moments later and said coldly, "You're coming too, ma'am. Witness reports say you encouraged the confrontation." As they were dragged out, I sat there shaking, one hand on my throbbing head, the other reaching toward my babies. Peter dropped everything and knelt beside me, his voice trembling. "Jenna, I'm here. It's okay. You're safe now." The nurse pressed a gauze pad to my wound. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. The monitors kept beeping, but I could barely hear them over the pounding in my chest. I looked toward the door where they had taken my brother away, my own flesh and blood, and whispered, "Why? Travis? Why?" No one answered. Only the sound of snow hitting the hospital window reminded me that the world outside kept moving, even when you're stopped. The next thing I remember after the chaos was waking up in a different room, the observation ward. My head felt heavy, wrapped in gauze, and the steady drip of N4 IV line kept rhythm with the faint sound of heart monitors nearby. Everything smelled like antiseptic and silence. Peter was sitting in a chair beside me, his eyes swollen from sleeplessness. The moment he noticed I was awake, he leaned forward, gently taking my hand. "Hey, baby," he said softly. "You're okay." They ran all the scans, no fracture, just bruising and mild concussion. "You scared me to death." I blinked slowly, trying to focus. "The babies." He smiled weakly. "Eli and Noah are fine. Carla's with them in the nursery. Franklin stayed up all night too. He said he's not leaving this hospital until you come home." The relief was so strong it hurt. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. I just don't understand. Why would he do that? My own brother. Peter's jaw tightened. Because people like them can't stand seeing you happy. But it's over now, Jenna. He's in custody. Both of them are. A soft knock came at the door. It was Detective Harper, the same woman who had spoken to Peter the night of the attack. She looked calm, professional, the kind of presence that made you feel both safe and exposed at once. Mrs. Hayes, she said kindly, flipping open a notepad. How are you feeling? Dizzy, I admitted. But I'll live. She nodded. Good. I wanted to let you know we've filed multiple charges: aggravated assault, endangerment of infants, and unlawful entry into a restricted medical area. Both suspects are in custody. The district attorney intends to prosecute aggressively. Peter straightened. And her parents? They've been fueling this for years. The detective's eyes softened. We're aware. The messages, the history of harassment, it all paints a clear picture. The DA's office will likely add them to the investigation as aiding and abetting through emotional coercion. But for now, our priority is you and the babies. She asked a few questions. How many times Travis struck me, what Tessa said, whether anyone else witnessed it. I told her everything. The look in his eyes, the sound of Eli crying, the blood that blurred my vision. When I finished, she paused her pen. You're very brave, Jenna, she said quietly. And everything you've told us matches the nurse's statements and the security footage. You did nothing wrong. After she left, Peter squeezed my hand. You hear that? You didn't do anything wrong. This time they'll pay for it. Carla entered soon after with Franklin behind her, holding a small blanket wrapped around one of the babies. She sat beside me, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead. Sweetheart, you scared us half to death, she whispered. But you're safe now. That's what matters. Franklin nodded, his voice rough with emotion. We already called a lawyer. The hospital's cooperating fully. There's footage, witnesses, everything. They won't be able to twist this into some family misunderstanding. Not this time. Peter exhaled, his eyes meeting mine. We'll go to court if we have to. And I'll be sitting in the front row every single day. The doctor came in shortly after, adjusting my drip. You'll need to stay for observation another 48 hours, he said. After that, if everything looks stable, you can go home. But rest. Your body's still healing, and you've got 2 little reasons to stay strong. I looked over at my sons, one asleep, the other fidgeting softly in Carla's arms. I reached out, my fingers trembling as they touched Eli's blanket. For the first time since the attack, I didn't feel afraid, only determined. Whatever came next, I wasn't facing it alone. By the time I was discharged from Denver Health, 6 days had passed since the attack. I was still weak, moving carefully, but the bruises had started to fade, leaving only the memory of what happened. The doctors said it would take time for my body to fully recover, but healing my trust in family, that was another story. Peter drove me home slowly through the snow-dusted streets of Aurora. Carla had already set up a quiet space in the living room, a rocking chair, a bassinet, a small table for my water and medication. She insisted I shouldn't walk much, and Franklin installed a baby monitor system so I could see the twins even from a couch. Just as I was beginning to settle into this fragile calm, we received a call from Detective Harper. The district attorney wants your official statement for court, she said. But don't worry, you don't need to come in person. We'll arrange a secure video link. You can testify from home. Peter squeezed my hand. You ready for that? I nodded. I need to be. A week later, our dining table had turned into a courtroom. A laptop sat open beside a bottle of baby formula, and 2 tiny heartbeats slept quietly in the next room. The screen flickered, revealing the Denver County courtroom, Judge Miller presiding. I could see Travis sitting at the defense table, his expression blank, and beside him, Tessa, avoiding my eyes. When the judge confirmed my name and location, the prosecutor, Victoria Reed, began. Mrs. Hayes, please tell the court what happened on December 4th at Denver Health Medical Center. My throat felt dry. I took a deep breath and began. I had just delivered my twin sons. My husband stepped out to get medicine. My brother and his wife entered my hospital room uninvited. At first, they said they came to congratulate me, but then Tessa started insulting me and my children. When I told her to stop, Travis got angry. He shouted that I disrespected his wife, and then he hit me.
Twice.
While I was holding one of my newborns. A hush filled the courtroom. Even through the screen, I could feel the weight of my words. Victoria continued gently. What happened after that? The nurses came in, I said, trying to stay composed. Security called the police. My husband came back and found me bleeding. They took Travis and Tessa away. I still can't understand how family could do something like that. The defense attorney stood. Mrs. Hayes, isn't it true you've had tension with your family for years? Yes, I said clearly. But tension doesn't excuse violence. The prosecutor showed the hospital's security footage. Travis charging toward me. The sound of Eli's crying echoing through the speakers. Even the judge's expression hardened. When my testimony ended, I saw Peter sitting behind the prosecutor in court, his face steady, eyes burning with pride. He couldn't touch me, but I felt his presence through the screen like an anchor. 2 days later, the verdict hearing was scheduled. I attended again through video call. The courtroom was silent as Judge Miller began reading. Based on the overwhelming evidence, including multiple witness testimonies, hospital reports, and video footage, the court finds the defendants Travis Hayes and Tessa Hayes guilty on all charges. Travis stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Tessa broke into tears, whispering something to her attorney. Judge Miller continued, voice stern and deliberate. For Travis Hayes, 7 years in state prison, without the possibility of early parole. For Tessa Hayes, 3 years in county jail and 2 additional years of supervised probation, including mandatory anger management counseling. Then the judge's eyes shifted toward the back of the courtroom. Regarding Derek and Brooke Hayes, the parents, this court has reviewed their pattern of emotional harassment and enabling behavior. They are hereby sentenced to 1 year of community service and issued a 10-year restraining order prohibiting any contact with Mrs. Jenna Hayes or her children. The gavel struck once. This case is closed. Peter let out a shaky exhale beside me. Carla covered her mouth, tears streaming silently. Franklin whispered, justice served. I just sat there, frozen, the judge's words echoing in my ears. For years, I had begged for my family to see me. Now they finally did, standing on the other side of the law. Detective Harper called later that evening.
You did it, Jenna, she said.
You stood up and the system stood with you. That's rare, and it's powerful. I looked down at Eli and Noah asleep in their cribs, tiny fists curled, faces peaceful. I didn't do it just for me, I told her softly. I did it so my sons will never think violence is love. Outside, Denver's winter sky was painted silver and quiet. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because justice had finally found its way home. Coming home after everything felt unreal, like stepping into a new world that still remembered the old one. The snow outside Denver had started to melt, leaving the streets wet and glistening. Peter drove carefully, one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting over mine. In the back seat, the twins slept peacefully, bundled in soft blue blankets. When we reached the house, Carla and Franklin were already waiting. The porch light glowed warm against the fading daylight. Carla rushed out before we even parked. Welcome home, my loves, she said, tears shining in her eyes. This house wasn't the same without you. Inside, everything was perfect. The living room smelled faintly of cinnamon. Carla's doing, of course. The cribs were set up near the window, sunlight spilling gently across the tiny pillows. Franklin had built a rocking chair himself, carved with small hearts along the edges. Every good story needs a comfortable seat, he said proudly. For the first time since the attack, I felt something settle in me. A calm that wasn't fragile, a peace that didn't ask permission. Peter became my shadow those first few weeks, taking night shifts, changing diapers, learning how to hold both babies at once. Look at me, he'd joke. I'm officially outnumbered. But beneath the humor, there was something deeper, a silent promise that he'd never let harm touch us again. Carla visited every morning. She'd hum old lullabies while folding laundry, teaching me tricks to soothe colicky cries and warm milk just right. Franklin would fix whatever broke before I even noticed it was broken. They never asked for anything in return, just smiles, just moments of laughter. And slowly, laughter returned. At first, it was small, the kind that slipped out accidentally when Peter made faces during diaper changes. Then louder, when Eli's hiccups startled Noah, who started crying until I sang to them both. The sound filled the house, spilling into corners that had once felt empty. The bruises on my head faded, but the memory didn't. Some nights, I'd wake up suddenly, hearing echoes of shouting that weren't really there. Peter would pull me close, whispering, "You're safe. It's over." And each time, I believed him a little more. Detective Harper checked in once more, letting us know that the restraining orders had been finalized. "They can't come near you, your husband, or the babies," she said. "Focus on your life now, not theirs."
So I did.
Peter went back to work part-time at the garage, but every evening, he'd come home and take one of the boys in his arms, humming softly as if rewriting the lullaby of our lives. I began to film small moments, Eli's first smile, Noah's first stretch, storing them like treasures of a world I'd built myself. Carla called those videos proof of healing. Franklin just said, "That's what victory looks like when it's quiet." Sometimes, as the sun set over the snow-capped roofs of Aurora, I'd sit by the window with both boys in my arms, feeling their tiny breaths against my chest. The city outside was still the same skyline, the same streets, but everything inside me had changed. For the first time, I wasn't surviving my story. I was living it. That night, snow fell quietly over Denver as I rocked my sons to sleep. Peter sat beside me, whispering, "We're safe now, truly safe." I looked at Eli and Noah, their tiny hands resting over each other, and felt peace for the first time in years. No hatred, no fear, just love, warmth, and new beginnings. And in that silence, I finally understood. The past no longer owned me. Thank you for listening to this story. If it moved you, please like this video and share it with someone who believes in courage and hope. Tell me in the comments which moment touched you most, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories every day.